Tonight, my guest is Elana Freeland, who's going to be talking about geoengineering and chemtrails. See you in about 5 minutes. Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust. Turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Good evening, everybody. How is everyone? Cue the crickets. Oh, I know you're out there. You're just hiding. I know it. Especially with if you're out of Sacramento, Northern California, it was a nice day today. And it was supposed to be hot. Let's hope tomorrow is a nice day. But anyway, my name is Charlotte. I'll be your host for the next hour. And I am also the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team based out of Sacramento, California. We're 35-45 strong up and down the state of California. So that means if you are in Manteca, let's say that like in the commercial, Manteca. If you're in Manteca or someplace down south, near Southern California, we have someone that lives nearby, and we can help you. Even if we're a couple counties away, we can still help you. So contact me via email at californiahaunts.org or californiahauntsradio.com or at Nextdoor or Facebook or wherever. All my stuff's public. You can send me hate mail. No, don't send me hate mail. But just contact me for help. And we will help. That's what we like to do. We like to help and educate. Just like tonight's show. Remember, I told you guys I'm a journalist, right? That's what I do. And it's not always all paranormal all the time on this channel. We talk about other things, meaningful things. Like, what are they doing to our skies? If they're doing anything to our skies. Or how about our food? Story I have is, I worked out in Woodland paper for about 5 years. I was the city editor out there. And I had a lot of dealings with UC Davis. Now, there's nothing wrong with UC Davis. Okay, UC Davis is a great school. But they had this thing called DQ University out there. And what were they doing? Growing crops. And not just any kind of crops. I'm talking ginormous things were coming out of there. So what were they doing to the crops? And they tasted all right. I mean, who knows what I put in my body eating that stuff? But I mean, it's stuff like that. I'm not saying it's UC Davis. I don't get in trouble with anybody at UC, but it's happening all over. They're putting things on our food. They're putting things in the sky. And then there's the company word about the sky. The sky is always we got to put stuff up there to bounce the radio waves off of. Blah blah blah. But who knows what it is, right? And I was telling you guys yesterday about looking up in the sky early in the morning. We never have a totally blue sky, ever. And there's a reason why. Because if you get up early in the morning, just after sunrise, and you look up, and there's planes up in the sky. And what are they doing? They're leaving these chemtrails. But they're not normal chemtrails. And they're not normal chemtrail patterns. They're doing it in like cross patterns, like a grid, like on graph paper. It's like a giant graph paper in the sky. What is that about? Right? Anyway, my guest tonight, Elana Freeland, is going to talk to us about that stuff. Maybe let's learn something. That's why I have a show. It's so that we can be educated. We'll come back a little smarter and a little wiser after this show. And I want everybody to behave themselves in the chat room. I already had a gentleman. The show hadn't even started. Had to send him packing. I will send you packing if you start misbehaving in the chat room. Whether you believe in this stuff or not, everybody is entitled to their opinion. But there's no bashing. I won't allow bashing. Okay? I'll let you know ahead of time. Okay. So, quick announcement. Saturday, 7 p.m. Pacific time, Nancy Matz and I are going to be over on Facebook Live at the California Haunts Ghostly Events page. And we are going to be... Sorry. Okay. And we're going... not me. She's going to be doing 5-minute readings for special readings. It's $10.99 for a 5-minute reading. There's only 6 spots left. So if you want to do that, I suggest you go over the California Haunts Ghostly Events page and sign up. But believe me, in 5 minutes, Nancy Matz can spew everything there is to spew for your reading. She can talk that fast, and she can put it together that fast. So it's a great event. So if you're interested in doing that, head on over to the California Hospital event page on Facebook. All right. Also, if you're watching from YouTube, look down in the right-hand corner. There's a little ghost there with a magnifying glass. That's our mascot. Click on that to subscribe. We're looking for subscribers. The more the merrier. There's not only shows like this, there's paranormal shows. There's like for tomorrow, we're going to have a domestic abuse kind of abuse thing going on with talk about sociopaths. So we're not always doing paranormal stuff. So there's if you look through all the videos on there, and there will be more than 200 starting on the 23rd. You're going to see, I think there's something for everybody over there, even for kids. All right. Also, if you're watching from Facebook, click that follow button. Love to have followers on Facebook. Love to have people watching us. That's what we are. You're over at Twitch? Same thing. Click that follow button. We really appreciate it. Okay, well, without further ado, I'm going to bring our guest in. She can tell you a little bit about herself, and then we're going to go from there. Here we go. Play nice, guys. Hello.
Hi, did you say your name's Charlotte?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, great. Yep. And I'm Elana. Yep.
Welcome. Tell me a little bit about you, please.
Well, let's see now. All right, I've been doing this kind of work on geoengineering and what it really is for about 13 years. I've written 3 books on it, and I just finished my last book on geoengineering. I have pretty much taken everybody to where we need to go by tying the geoengineering and what's coming down on us and what we're breathing in and what's in the GMO fields and what is going on with the inoculations. All of it is connected. And I think I've taken it about as far as I can, and it's time for someone else to tell more stories about the geoengineering.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, and I mean, I do have other things I do. I'll mention, because since this show is so eclectic,
yes.
Very nice.
Eclectic.
Yeah, I like it. I have written a series before I was doing the geoengineering called Sub Rosa America, A Deep State History. And it's in a fictional format to have some 60s people heading on the Mother Road, Route 66, from California to Dallas to see where President John F. Kennedy was shot. And a lot happens to them en route, which also messes with time. They're meeting dreamers, they're meeting dead people, they're meeting all kinds of people that are telling them the direction America is going in till when they arrive in Dallas. They've really changed. They were going to just live their little personal lives and ha, ha, ha. And by the time they get to Dallas, they realize that they really need to pay attention to what's going on in America. So, yeah, that's 4 books, 1,300 pages over 4 books. And I highly recommend it. It's what I think is my magnum opus. But and there is geoengineering in it. There really is. In fact, it all started out with a dream that I had in 1994. 1994, I had a dream one night in which in front of me were the huge, probably 4 stories high, numbers 2019. And they were on fire, those numbers. And when I saw that date, I took it as a date, 2019. Remember, this is 1994. I said, that's how I'm going to start the book. I'm going to do a flashback of one of the older characters. And I'm going to talk about how America is just coming down and everything is coming down. And it'll start in 2019. And by the time we got to 2019, can you believe it? I mean, I was like, oh my gosh, please, please tell me it's not going to be 2019. And of course it was. And I still am in a real conundrum about that. I don't know where that came from, but it was as clear as day to me that I needed to bring up 2019 as the day that America goes down. So anyway, that's my writing career. And I was a 60s person back in the 60s. Very proud of that. I'll be 75 this month. Who could believe I could get so old on the outside and still on the inside be as young as I am? But I'm very happy to have been a 60s generation person. It was phenomenal. It was not like Time magazine tells it, that it was not just all sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Believe me, we were political. We were curious. We had long political and philosophical and spiritual discussions. We were examining what had happened in the 3 assassinations of John Kennedy, Martin Luther King, and Robert Kennedy. We were spiritual seekers. We were looking for the meaning of life and what it really is to be human, all the deep, deep questions. It was fantastic. And I pretty much was drug-free and really was completely dedicated to developing a higher consciousness regarding everything in life, and taking care of my body, which I knew the medical establishment, I stopped going there when I was 13 and figured out they were just making money off of sickness. So I studied Chinese medicine in my 20s and have been using Chinese medicine all these years. Everything works, nothing hurts. And I think that's about it. I live in a little apartment in the Pacific Northwest. I definitely am a student of Rudolf Steiner. 45 years I've been studying Rudolf Steiner. He's sort of my trailblazer guide. And I was a Waldorf teacher for years. I've taught in public high schools. I've taught college level. I got a master's degree in historiography at St. John's College in Santa Fe, New Mexico in my 40s. And yeah, that's pretty good. There's of course more, but that's enough for a starter.
Well, I understand what you're saying about being of age and feeling young still, because I'm there too.
Oh, well, not as far as I am.
I didn't say that. I'm just saying I'm there too, okay?
Yeah, well,
I wake up and I think, I can't be that old.
But what's really cool about getting older, at least for me, and I'm sure for you, is I don't know, I just know more. And not just because of the time, but because I've really laid my consciousness down as a work ethic and as an observer and a writer. I mean, I love it. But you have to keep your health. Yeah. Very, very, very important.
I think it's that old saying too. Suddenly you realize you're talking like your parents.
Yeah.
But I mean, suddenly my father is the one I would argue with all the time, and I was always around my mother more. And the more I'm on my own doing stuff, the more I understand my father.
Isn't that something? Yeah, exactly. I don't think that's true for me, but I know what you mean. And I mean, what I want to do tonight, and how long is the show? I don't remember.
About an hour, or we can go more if you want, whatever. I'm good.
Okay, let's go an hour, because I had an interview this morning too. Okay, so what I want to do is, everybody thinks when I say the word geoengineering, they immediately think chemtrails. And that's understandable. That's where it all started. In fact, I started 13 years ago. Back when I started, I became friends with one of the predominant scientists Clifford Carnicom, who was probably the only independent scientist studying what was coming down after the jets would pass. And he would see, being a trained scientist, he used to work for the Department of Defense. He worked for Bureau of Land Management. And then he finally figured out they were interested in stuff he was not interested in going where they were going. And he went off on his own. But he could tell by the way the jets were flying up in the stratosphere, and that would be commercial jets too, not just military. He could tell it was no condensation trail. Let's take care of that one first. Most of the flights now, the long spewing trail behind the jets, that is a chemical trail. That is no contrail. That is far beyond water condensation. So what's going on now in the fuel, yes, in the engine chamber, but also supplementary chemicals are being carried by even commercial jets under a project called Cloverleaf. And that's about 30 years now, almost 30 years that this has been going on. I know the newspapers and the weather programs and everything else is going to tell people that, well, we may have to do geoengineering. We're not happy about it. We may have to spray sulfur. We may have to do this or that. But as we know, it's mainstream media and it's pretty much all lies, because we have been doing geoengineering now for, in the program I'm examining, about 30 years. So let's just cut to the chase. And what happened for me is I met Clifford Carnicom in New Mexico when I was living there. And it was one of those destiny moments, I like to call it, where it was coincidental. We're just at the same breakfast and we start talking. And suddenly I find out that he is examining the condensation that is coming down from the sky and the detritus in his HEPA filter. And he's finding biologicals coming down from the sky in the wake of these jets. And biology was my undergrad second major. And I have a file on chemtrails, and I have a file on HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project, the ionospheric heater up in Gakona, Alaska, that is just a giant of a weapon system. So those two files, I had them not because I was studying chemtrails. No way. I was working on the Sub Rosa America series. And I had files, I had probably over 100 files on every aspect of American life that I would find, so that I could get a real handle on how much was Sub Rosa. The term Sub Rosa is from the Middle Ages, and it means under the rose. But what that meant then, it could have meant a house of prostitution. It could have also meant that it was hidden from the public. And that's the way I use it in Sub Rosa America, is the hidden America. The history that nobody ever hears is the one that I was after. So I began to, with Clifford, and I began with writing a book for a publisher who asked me if I thought I could write a book on chemtrails. And that first book came out in 2014. And that was Chemtrails, HAARP, and the Full Spectrum Dominance of Planet Earth. And that book really looks at weather and extreme weather we were having then. We had extreme weather for about 15 years, where we had hurricanes. Take Katrina down in New Orleans. We had Sandy in New York. We had the Haitian hurricane south of us. And then we had Fukushima. All of those hurricanes I examine in detail in that first book. So the book also goes into one of the biologicals that Clifford latched onto, where he was looking at what exactly these fibers were in what was coming down in the wake of these jets. And the fibers, when he was able to break into them, not easy, because he's just a scientist on his own. He doesn't have all the expensive microscopes and the expensive machinery to do these things. But he found a way through chemicals to break into the polymer sheathing, which is what the filament was, and get inside it and see the organs that were inside. And by the time he had examined them over the next 15, 20 years, he had discovered that they were completely bioengineered and that they had all three components, all three bits of the three ways of categorizing life on Earth. And so that was the first thing I did, was that book. And then that book gave birth to another book through my being on George Norrie's show, The All-Nighter. And after I came away from that show, oh gosh, there must have been 200 or 300 people who emailed me, one of whom was Billy Hayes, known to be the HAARP man. That's kind of the moniker that he had, because he was the team leader when they built HAARP up in Alaska, the ionosphere heater, the very giant one filled with acres of phased array antennas. And Billy contacted me and said, hearing about your book is like, people have all said to me, Billy, you've been talking about this for years, and here she's written a book on this. And so he said, I want to help you write the next one about where it's going from here. And that's when I wrote Under an Ionized Sky, from Chemtrails to Space Fence Lockdown. And it was the space fence that Billy really, really helped me with. He himself, you may be interested to know, was an MKUltra survivor, victim of the program that the CIA started in the 50s, after we had brought the Nazis over, the engineers and scientists and doctors, under Operation Paperclip, and they came with all their records and all their experiments that they had run in the concentration camps. So MKUltra was truly a real seed, a demon seed that was planted in America, and is, I'm sorry to say, still going, but it now is mostly electronic, and uses hypnosis, drugs, and pain induction in the old way. Not so much anymore, but they have their own pain induction now through targeting, and they have their own drugs, because what you find in this, Charlotte, is when you begin examining all these pieces of the puzzle of how the environment has been weaponized and how the synthetic biology inside of us has to do with the Morgellons of yesteryear. All of it is connected. And that's my forte, by the way, as a researcher who studied historiography, which is how to write histories. I mean, I learned how to really, really research and go in where angels fear to tread, into patents, papers, science conventions, military, anything I can find from the military, in order to put together a context as to how all this has been planned right up to the inoculation that is going on now. And it was all of a piece. And what the one player you find over and over and over again is Big Pharma. And by Big Pharma, I'm going all the way back to World War II, when IG Farben was in Germany. And it was a huge, then, I mean, we're talking the 30s, it was a huge corporation, very powerful. They had already done World War I, which was really chemical warfare. That's what it was. It destroyed an entire generation of European youth. And they had gone on to World War II and running all the chemicals for that as well. So we're still saddled with this cartel, I call it, because when IG Farben, when the war ended in 1945, IG Farben then split into several satellite corporations, one of which was Bayer, one of which was Monsanto. And these chemical corporations, as you know, that's who's putting all the chemicals into the jets that are flying, so that they can dump stuff on us that then we breathe, we eat, and we drink. So so it all fits a piece. And when Billy came on board to guide me through all the electromagnetics, all the things that he was MK Ultra programmed to know how they worked, he was invaluable to me. And we were...
Real quick, for people that don't get the whole thing with the contrails on, the contrails on the jets, there's people that don't look up and realize the difference. What is the difference between a normal contrail for jet and then a chemtrail contrail for jet?
So if you're looking up, and first of all, if you see a contrail, it's very rare now. Most fuel is all chemical. So you're not going to see that. Maybe in a small plane, a very small plane from a nice local airport. Okay, so the contrail begins about 3 to 5 feet behind the jet. It doesn't come straight out of the aft part of the combustion chamber. And when it comes out, it's a very short trail. And it will only last, at the very most, 30 seconds. And it dissipates because it's mostly water vapor. So it just dissipates. When you're looking at a chemtrail, or as I call them, chemical trail, you're looking at either, because I don't know how much you look in the sky at these things, but you'll sometimes see one trail, you'll see 2 trails, you can see 2 trails or 4 trails coming out of each wing. I mean, you could have as many as 8, 10 trails up there.
I have seen them in a checkerboard pattern too, where the planes are crossing each other and putting them up.
Right. They will do that. They will make patterns, but now it's getting much more surreptitious. Okay. A lot of chemicals are being laid. Oh, but let me finish the. I
just wanted to clarify what they were, because some people don't look.
No, it's good. So for the chemical trail can be very long, and it'll last. It can last 30 minutes, an hour, as it's fed and fed and fed, and then it dissipates out and forms what in yesteryear we would have called a cirrus cloud cover. But this is not real cirrus. These are not even real clouds up there, I'm telling you, because of what HAARP was able to do. And that's super important. HAARP and the entire purpose of the Air Force, the Navy, and Raytheon and Lockheed Martin running that program was that it finally controlled the ionosphere. The story fed to the public was that the whole thing of the HAARP building and then experimentation by DARPA was actually not at all about submarine communication. That was the story they told the public. No, it wasn't about that. It was about breaking into the ionosphere with all those hundreds of phased array antennas up in Alaska. You can look at a picture. If I had my PowerPoint up, I'd show you a picture of HAARP. But it is acreage of just endless phased array antennas. You all should be concerned about phased array antennas because, one, they're being put up everywhere in our smart cities, and they're different from the old antennas, like for the 2.4 gigahertz, 3G, 4G that we've had, because the phased array antennas do not radiate out as an energy. No, they are very much a beam weapon system. And so that's what HAARP does. That's what an iPhone, a 5G and a 4G plus iPhone do. They have phased array antennas in them. They are weapon systems. This is why I do not own a cell phone at all, never will, never have. So when the HAARP experiments went on, what they really accomplished, and there I have footage of a Senate meeting in Alaska where it is admitted that HAARP is completely controls the ionosphere. Then what happened is they break into the ionosphere, stimulate all the atoms up there so that the electrons are popping off of the atoms, and all of those electrons become very electrified, which is what ions really means, and then they are drawn down into our atmosphere to ionize our atmosphere. The purpose of ionizing our atmosphere? Well, for all the wireless activity that we now have. A lot of people immediately think, oh, cell phones, movies, fast downloads, etc. No, primarily look at all that as dual use. That's a military term. It means that civilians can use it, and it can be used for military operations and intelligence. You have to include intelligence in that. So now we have an atmosphere, as Clifford Carnicom ascertained with plenty of experiments that he ran in reading atmospheric pressures and things and the composition of the atmosphere. We have an entirely different atmosphere now than we had, say, 30 years ago. And we're breathing it. So what's coming down is what I concentrate on in both books. Yes, I do. But primarily in the second book, what I'm looking at is the space fence lockdown, which we would call smart grid lockdown, and looking at all the microwave towers, the iPhones, the 60 hertz in the walls, all of the electronic items that we seem to think we can't live without, all of the NEXRADs that are near radio stations, these all the platform that Lockheed Martin owns the patents for, was all about sandwiching us between satellites and a lot of heavy metals, nano-sized heavy metals dumped up in the stratosphere. And down here, all of the instrumentation by which the electromagnetics of top and bottom are most intense in between, which is where we live. And that's what we've been living in. And so I think when I wrote the third book, which just came out last October in 2021, the title of that one is Geoengineered Transhumanism, how the environment has been weaponized by chemicals, electromagnetism, and nanotechnology for, very important word there, for synthetic biology. And now in this book, which is longer than either of the other two books, in fact, I would say this book is as long as both of the other books put together, 650 or so pages. We learn how all of this intentionality by Big Pharma primarily, but the military serves Big Pharma. Their purpose was all along to make the Earth environment inimical to the natural human being so that the medical industry and Big Pharma can make a fortune of profits off of people's endless illness, endless terrible autoimmune conditions that really 30 years ago just were not here. Autism was low. All of the things that come from what we are breathing and what is electromagnetically stimulated in the ionized atmosphere now, it was just not here. And you have to see, and I prove it, I'm convinced, and so are readers who've read the whole books even now, that it's all of one intent to head humanity toward transhumanism and to completely control the planet under what's called the doctrine of full spectrum dominance.
Well, when you talk about electromagnetic fields, I've, as a ghost hunter, I'm dealing with this stuff all the time. I get into people's houses and you go in and the EMF is off the charts,
Yeah.
A lot of people are living in cages and they don't understand why they're hallucinating and all this is going on.
Wow.
And that's one of the chief side effects of too much, EMF is they start hallucinating and not sleeping and all this stuff happens and paranoia and all this, so I understand perfectly what you're talking about.
So when you go into these houses, you have your own equipment with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I'm wondering is, according to directionality and the strength of the fields that you're encountering, does it seem like it's just from the items in their house, these electromagnetic items, or is there another beam system coming in and stimulating those fields?
I've run into both. Yeah. We had a house that when the power was turned off, the EMF went high.
Wow. Okay, so that's what I'm wondering is how many of these people are actually being targeted,
right,
by people who have power over the 5G, particularly the 5G systems.
Yeah. So I've run into both where with the lights and stuff on, or their clock. What's bad? Or like we found that bedside radio clocks.
Yeah.
Are horrible. And anybody that has like those beds that are supposed to be so comfy for you, those Niagara adjustable beds, just full of EMF.
And I do say that to people when they start wanting to know what the remedies are, what they can do to be safer. The first thing I always say, besides do an inventory of your electromagnetic toys and see what you can do without, because all of that stuff is dual use and can be used by the clever who have access to 5G systems. I also say, if you're sleeping on one of those comfy beds with lots of springs in it, metal springs, you don't want that. You want, because all those springs can be used as antennas for EMF systems. So, I sleep on a futon on a wooden frame. And have no metal in my bed. I also have no electromagnetic toys in there. And thanks for saying that about the bedside electric clocks.
Yeah.
I mean, better to get one of those little battery travel clocks for your alarm than that.
Well, look what happened when they started installing smart meters.
Yeah.
What a mess. I had one of the psychics on my team, lived in an apartment. They put a smart meter just outside her window. She started seeing gray beings in her apartment.
Wow.
Just from the smart meter.
Did she, we're not going to argue about this, but did she think that they were actually they would have been plasma if they were real. Did she think they were real and they were sort of like radio reception coming in as a certain frequency so that she could actually see them?
Yeah.
Yeah. So not holograms or not being broadcast.
These were three-dimensional, things she was seeing in her apartment. And it didn't happen at all until after they put the smart meter in.
So doesn't that mean that these entities, like the Greys, really they must love electromagnetics?
To feed off of that, which is interesting because when you look at like the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, what happens? They suck the power out of the cars. They're sucking the power out of this. The lights are going out in the cities and stuff. And so so they must be just sucking up that electricity.
Yeah, exactly. So yet another reason to examine your relationship with electromagnetics, because the bodies we have now, our natural human bodies, are not electromagnetic. People will often say to me that the body is electromagnetic. That's not quite true. Of course, I'm a Steiner person, so let me tell you what Steiner says. He says that at birth, we have a being, an electromagnetic being called a doppelganger, enter us at the first breath we take of the Earth atmosphere. And the doppelganger will live in our body right along our spinal column. That's where it lives for all of our life until 3 days before we're going to die. And then it will abandon us. And so those last few days, often I've heard people describing irascible or cranky dads or grandpas. And the last few days, they just turn into lambs. So the idea, says Steiner, is that the doppelganger comes into our bodies because our bodies are really, they have etheric, the ether is very rich in us. And the ether is the substance, it's not quite a substance, but it is, that is alive, like elan vital, the ki or chi, Chinese say. And Wilhelm Reich described it as orgone. We're very rich in that because we're living organisms. But when with the doppelganger in there, we do have this stream of electromagnetism for the nervous system. So our brains work. So we can think by sort of, I think of the brain as a diving board. So we can make these dives, either, pedestrian types of dives, like at 5 o'clock, I need to make a phone call, or a much more extraordinary dive, like thinking about quantum physics or mathematics. So that idea that we have this magnetic being in us, electronic and magnetic, electromagnetic being is, I think I first experienced it, and I'm sure you are around it a lot if you're going into haunted situations.
Right.
I experienced it at 8 years old or 9 years old when my mother remarried and strangely took me on their honeymoon with them. And we went up into the White Mountains in New Hampshire to see the old man in the mountain, which, by the way, is no longer there. But we're all standing up high in the mountains. And at that time, they did not have the fencing that they now have, which goes pretty far up. At that time, they just had a sort of a barrier, but you could have stepped over it easily. And I was a little girl, and I was over by the barrier, kind of like looking out and looking down just to scare myself a little bit. And at that moment, I heard the voice inside me say, "Go ahead, jump.
Oh.
And that was really the first time, in retrospect, I realized it. It was the first time I actually heard from my double that had this cool idea to just send me down there. Fortunately, I didn't do it. But the double is real, and we have many very scary stories of doubles. And I often wonder, like even in houses where you're going where there's a haunting, if the double is involved in it, because that very much sounds like the double style.
Sure, absolutely. There's a question in the chat room which is kind of interesting, and I know we've run into this too. What about natural resources such as quartz?
Well, for what?
For because they can have an effect as well on people as well. Like, if there's water running through quartz, one thing we run into too is you get EMF if like in cave country where there's water running over quartz areas, and you'll pull high EMF off that.
Yeah, and I think that the water that falls, like say from a chemical rain, because most of the rain we get now is chemical, I'm sorry to say. Okay. For people who like to go out and take a nice walk in warm rain, right. I highly suggest you don't do it the first hour and a half of the rain. But certainly if there is quartz involved and crystals, other crystals, then you can have all sorts of electromagnetic effects.
Yeah, it's hitting off quartz.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's the quartz underground. Yeah. Cool. The other thing I was going to say, you talk about different items in your house, high EMF. These light bulbs are pushing on us.
Yes.
Oh
Yes.
my God. Go over to Janelle. Janelle will have an EMF meter. Anybody that has an EMF meter, walk over. I'm not talking the old style light bulbs. I'm talking the new style light bulbs. Walk over to your lamp and turn your EMF meter on.
That's right. And that brings up a very important. Okay, so I'm thinking you're talking about the LEDs.
Yes.
You're talking about the curly Q light bulbs that are so cheap, which, you know, they even say, if I had to laugh, if you break one of these, quickly leave the room and shut the door because mercury is being released. So it's like, why would I want a light bulb that I have to run out of the room if I crack it? So no, I use full spectrum bulbs. I pay the extra, and it's an investment in my long range health, and I don't mind at all. The LEDs are particularly pernicious, though. I want to say this because they are pulsing, and it's the pulsing that is the primary problem. Besides the fact that it's not full spectrum, it's just the white end of the spectrum.
Drives me insane too.
Yeah, and they a lot of people have them as inserts in their living rooms, and I just can't even believe it. I mean, I walk in there and I'm like, oh my God, this is a disaster, because eventually there will be cancer, there will be all sorts of things. It's the pulsing that is particularly dangerous because we are resonant beings, and that's a really wonderful thing because we can resonate with a fine piece of classical music. We can have an amazing whole body experience sexually. We can have a whole body experience looking at a beautiful piece of art in a museum. I love being a resonant being. The problem is that my body will possibly, if the frequency is at a certain pitch, it will start resonating with whatever frequency is being beamed into me. And that's the problem. A guy in England named Mark, what's Mark's last name? He lives in Gateshead, which is a community in the north of England. And he went on the internet repetitively talking about the LED lamps and lights that they were putting in his area. And now we have them all through the United States. Yes. Those are the ones that are sort of oblong shaped, and you'll particularly see them at the tops of very high poles out on freeways and parkways. Those are really bad news. And they, I don't know if you've noticed, but they'll go on when you're approaching, and then when you've passed, they will go off. So they obviously know when we're there. And the pulsations really pulse us, and that simply, please do not have LEDs. I suppose in a flashlight you could have one because
I learned my lesson. I had one up in my bathroom. When they die, oh my gosh, when they die, they will pop.
Oh, they do.
And they make a god awful sound. Then you're wondering what it is. Then it smells like there's something on fire, like there's a short.
No, that's the LEDs?
Yeah.
Not the curly guys.
No, that's the LEDs when they go.
No kidding. See, I never allow them.
I was thinking there was a fire or something in my bathroom, and it turns out the bulb died. Because I was standing there and I kept hearing this popping noise, this crackling popping thing. And I thought, oh my God, there's a short somewhere, something's going on, And it turns out the LED, and then all of a sudden and there was no smoke or nothing. You could just smell this smell. It's insane. When I was taking photography back in the late 80s, we'll say that. And I remember, fluorescent lights. And I remember, because it wasn't digital cameras, it was, SLR cameras. In order to compensate for the colors, you had to use a green filter because it wasn't natural light.
Right.
And what I'm noticing with photography now is that everything has gone LED.
Because
everything's gone curly light too. And the problem is, it's not natural light. It doesn't give off a natural glow.
No, it's in the blue end of the spectrum.
Yeah, it's ridiculous to use.
Yeah.
It's like my spotlight here. I got a regular bulb over here as my spotlight. I can't stand the other things.
Well, yeah, and incandescents are available again. I mean, for a long time, it was very hard to find them, but now they're all over the place,
Yep.
and definitely do. I buy these full spectrum light bulbs, so they have the red end of the spectrum and the blue end of the spectrum involved, and that. Yes, it's. I'm so used to it now. I'm very sensitive to the light.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought lights up.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Is that part of it?
I've had
You
my
know,
moments. Yeah.
Oh, just I wanted to tell you that sometimes if people are seeing two suns in the sky or two moons in the sky, if you look closely at one or the other, you'll see that the sun that is our sun, the actual star that is ours, is a sort of golden light and has a round perimeter. If you look at the other one, it is no doubt a solar simulator, which is completely nothing but masses of LED bulbs in hexagonal panels. And if you notice, the quality of the light is very white. I mean, exceedingly white, like those terrible LED
Oh, they're nasty
headlights that have been allowed, which can hypnotize you. Really terrible idea. And then around the edge of the solar simulator, you'll see a sort of raggedy edge. It will not be a smooth round at all because you're looking at hexagonal panels. So just to let people know that really does exist. It really does. And that we still have our sun, and not to worry.
Here's a question: with all the stuff that they're putting into the atmosphere, they're always honest about the ozone layer. Is this stuff affecting the ozone layer at all?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, the fellow who designed the cover of my third book is an expert on ozone. So, oh yeah, I mean, I have some horror stories that aren't hauntings, but are actually geoengineered projects, such as the day a few years ago, I think it was 2009, I want to say, or 8. Our entire magnetosphere, which is 22,000 kilometers up, went like a pancake and totally collapsed for 3 hours.
Wow.
And it was not allowed in the news. It was only in retrospect that you could find sort of rumors here and there and see little teeny weeny commentaries, because they're constantly experimenting now that they have the atmosphere ionized, which basically means the atmosphere is like a battery or like something, an antenna. Now that they have that and they can control the ionosphere as to how much ionization to bring in and etc., they're doing all sorts of experiments with our plasma sun, that they're saying is due to CMEs and solar flares and blah, blah, blah. And yet it's not that, it's them. This is my problem with the whole global warming, climate change cover story, is that there is truth in the fact that there is a warming that goes on when you're using ionospheric heaters. It will warm the atmosphere quite well. And then climate change, yes, the climate is being changed, would be the way I would put it.
Right.
It's not changing naturally. No, it's being changed. And so that's what I want, is I want to bring this whole issue just for the geoengineering part, and not even the synthetic biology part, bring it to people's attention that we need to really, really say to ourselves, wow, what am I seeing? Like you look up, you see two suns. Or you look up and you see this raggedy edge sun with very blindingly white light. To learn enough about the technology that now exists and is not science fiction, to know what you're looking at, so that you're not making up stories of like aliens and all that. We've got enough confusion going on through the disinformation that is constantly spewed out by the mainstream media and NASA, in order that we really need to get very a little sharper. And I know it sounds crazy that I'm saying that, because never have I seen so much mind control on a broad scale as I see now. Whether it's my town or somebody else's town or whatever's going on. We've seen too much TV. We've been programmed. I mean, they even call it programs and programming on TV. I mean, it's like, it's right in our face that we're being programmed. And now we have these, most people have these iPhones that are programming them. And again, that programming process is done through a very sophisticated pulsing frequencies type of technology. And it's the pulsing that is going to get us. By pulsing certain frequencies, they can change our behavior, they can change our thoughts, they can change our emotions and our feelings. It's important to know something about how this works. You don't need a PhD, you don't need to be a rocket scientist. You just need to understand a little bit of how these technologies work so that you can safeguard yourselves, your children, your grandchildren, etc. Very important.
Well, you know what's really strange, and this is fun, weird to bring up. Well, first off, I agree with Athena. Athena says that, you know, because she lives in North Carolina, and like she'll say, you wake up, it's a beautiful blue sky, early in the morning, and then they start flying. Like she says, she's seen the checkerboard pattern, and then it's hazy. You know, you never get a clear sky because of all this. But the other point I was going to make, and this is kind of silly, but it's not silly, when you say that people need to understand how they could program you, Friday the 13th did that movie. Not Friday the 13th, Halloween. One of the Halloween movies did this thing where they were making these masks. And they were of course they were killing people with these masks. But what it was is they had like a metal piece on the mask, and the kids would be watching TV. And they would send a message through the TV that would come through the mask. And it was a pulsating message.
Because the metal was like an antenna.
Yeah, the metal was like an antenna.
And that's the type of masks that most people wear now and are required in places of business where the mask is still required. It has that piece of antenna across the top.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, hello, let's wake up. This is an electromagnetic era.
Yeah.
And when they say they want the doctrine of full spectrum dominance, that's a very important phrase, and I'm sure you've heard it. It is about the electromagnetic spectrum. And when you look at an electromagnetic spectrum with gamma waves at one end and radio waves at the other end, and then you have all of these other different frequencies in between, you look at what our visual range is, the human visual range, and it's tiny. It's a little teeny weeny wedge. And so all this is going on. I mean, you know that because you're doing hauntings where you're encountering entities that have bodies or embodiments that are at certain frequencies.
Right.
They don't have bodies like ours.
Right.
They have, well, I think they're plasma. They're made of plasma because I go back to the photographs that Wilhelm Reich, MD, took back in the 50s with infrared film out in the Mojave Desert. You can still see those. And he saw entities all the way around in the sky, massive.
I'll have to look that up. That's cool.
And also Trevor Constable, who very much studied Reich, and and Reich was murdered, of course. But Trevor also did the same thing. He took infrared film, went into the Mojave Desert, and took photos of the same entities, 20 some years later, after Reich had done that. And what they look like is so funny because I had this biology background, right? So I used to spend a lot of time in the lab looking through the microscope, just 200 power or something, at microbes, and they look like these little blobby things. And that's exactly what these large entities that look sort of like balloons up there. They're very big and sometimes fuzzy. Trevor has some wonderful pictures in his book, The Cosmic Pulse of Life, where they even have little eyes. I don't know if they really have eyes or if they just thought, well, if humans look at us, we really should have some eyes. So they'll think we're looking through the eyes. I don't know. But these are real entities, and they have a different frequency than ours. And, you know, to me, that's what it's all about, is frequency and the pulsing. And the pulsing is essential when you're looking at mind control, because we are resonant beings, and we unfortunately or fortunately will begin to resonate with whatever frequency is being sent our way.
That's spooky.
Well, it is, because I explained the double thing,
Right.
so that people no longer think we are naturally electromagnetic. We're not really naturally electromagnetic, except we naturally have a double in all of us after we're born. But we are naturally etheric, or have ether. And if you go deep into space, they'll tell you that, I think what they say is 95% of all space is plasma. Well, that's not exactly true. Plasma is considered the fourth state of matter. But really, the more I began to read about it and read, I realized, no, that plasma is not the fourth state of matter. It's actually the first state of matter. And what happens in space is you have all this ether. It's, you know, 99.9% of all space, other than planets and stars and things, is all ether. And we used to use the term ether in science until the 1920s. And then it was banned by the scientism nuts that took over science at that time and began to politicize it, and, you know, made it dishonest. So the ether is in the universe, and then suddenly there's an electromagnetic event. Maybe it's a Birkeland current, maybe it's an Alvin wave, whatever it is. It kind of zaps that bit of ether, and then that together, that makes the beginning of matter. And now you have plasma. And then the plasma, if it gets into an atmosphere like ours, or maybe another planet too, it will begin to sort of densify. And then you have the incarnation, or the entry of, you know, some sort of being, either an entity that's a non-human or anti-human, or a human being. So to me, when you see these things in the haunted houses, I would think that they have plasma bodies. My grandmother was a Romanian gypsy. She was a Roma, and she was clairvoyant. I am not clairvoyant. I'm very clear on that. But I do have a sort of peripheral vision thing that goes on, where I can actually, you know how you see something and then you go like that and it's gone, right? Or you can't see it anymore because you're looking full on, that sort of thing. And then I also can sometimes feel dead people. I think they're dead, standing behind me, and they're not scary. They're not bad dead people. They're probably relatives or friends of mine who've gone beyond the threshold or something, because Rudolf Steiner is very clear that the dead are always with you. They're just there. They're right there because they're not burdened anymore by the physical body. Okay, so do you want me to go to the synthetic biology part now? Because we have so much fun talking about hauntings and things that
you're coming up on an hour here. So did you want to stay on just an hour, or you want to continue?
No, I should just stay on an hour. I'm sort of endless.
Let's schedule you another night. How's that?
Well, that'd be good. You think I still fit in your show? Yeah,
absolutely.
I think so. Absolutely, yeah. And I just want to say to people, and then I'll talk about where they can get the books.
Okay.
I want to say to people that this inoculation drama going on now is absolutely connected to what is going on in the sky, because it's the same player, Big Pharma. And what is being dumped on us, and that we're breathing in on a nano scale, and that's super important because it's on a nano scale, it can easily slip through the blood-brain barrier. And then it will remain in the body because it is connected to radio frequency um, that is being run by somebody on a laptop, I would guess in Colorado Springs or maybe somewhere else. And those nanobots inside of me, inside of you, inside of everyone who breathes this earthly air now, can be programmed from a distance and can be very useful for turning us into transhumans, okay? Turning us into something that is not so human anymore. And that's where the book goes. And that's the important part is, why am I out here beating my drum over and over and over again? Because I am concerned that humanity will not survive this machination, this machining of the human body through genetics and through nanotechnology. So I just wanted to be clear on that. Okay, so get the books. You can get them at Amazon.
How can people find you?
Well, they can find me through elanafreeland.com. That's my website. My webmistress does a beautiful job there. And I am posting every morning on the one site that Facebook still allows me. It's called EMF Planetary Engineering. I post a lot of things. And then on gab.com, I am you go up to the top and press groups. And I am a group called Geoengineered Transhumanism with Elana Freeland. Both places I post every morning. And then for getting the books, you can go through Amazon for the Chemtrails HAARP book from 2014, for the Under An Ionized Sky from 2018. And you can even get a black and white edition of Geoengineered Transhumanism. But if you want a color edition of, and I recommend it because it's 60 illustrations of the Geoengineered Transhumanism, you have to go to the Rudolf Steiner bookstore, a very small bookstore in Seattle. You can find it on the web, Seattle, Washington, and order a book from there, and it will be sent to you.
Okay, cool. No, I want to continue this conversation. So I would you like to come back on?
Sure. Give me some time because I'm pretty booked. I'm by the way, I'm speaking next month at the Red Pill Expo in Indianapolis, Indiana. And, I'm sort of prepping for that.
Sure. Okay. Fair enough. We'll do that. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Charlotte. It's been really fun.
It's been a blast. You have a good evening, okay?
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wow. I have been waiting to get somebody on like her for a long time. And I mean, this goes back to my blog talk radio days to get somebody to talk about chemtrails and stuff. I definitely want to get her back on to talk about stuff because there's still things to talk about. Like, yes, they are trying to do things to our health, and they are this. There's actually pictures online that you can go on and see these planes. If you do enough searching, these planes that have these big vats on them before they take off. Now, do I think it's actually happening? Who knows? But you got to have an open mind for everything. Tomorrow, we're shifting gears again. Donna Anderson is going to be with us. Donna Anderson married what she thought was Mr. Wonderful, and Mr. Wonderful turned into a sociopath. He took something like $227,000 from her, lied about his background, his family, and all that stuff. And he cheated on her, married someone else when he was married to her, that kind of thing. So she's going to be on to tell her story. She's written 8 books about how to deal with sociopaths because she's out trying to help people. If they're stuck in a relationship with one, or if they're, to just how to watch out for one in a relationship that they're in and avoid it. So she's going to be with us tomorrow at 6:30 to tell her story. So be sure to be here for that. Now I'm going to give you guys a heads up, especially for the ones on the RSS feed. Thursday, we are going to have the gentleman who owns Harold the Haunted Doll is going to be on Thursday. All right. Harold the Haunted Doll. And Harold the Haunted Doll has as sinister a reputation as the other famous haunted doll. My mind is like Jello. I forgot. I'm sorry. I'm still thinking about things up in the sky right now. But That's going to be a show to watch too. So we've got 2 really good shows coming up. Plus Nancy's on Friday, and Nancy's going to be in the special. We're going to have that special reading on Saturday with Nancy over at California Haunts Ghostly Events. So you guys can check that out. 5-minute read, $10.99. All right. But yeah, so Donna Anderson's going to be with us to talk about sociopaths. And then Harold the Haunted Doll story is going to be here Friday. Okay. So yeah. Anyway, I thought this was really informative. I do want to get her back on again because I would like to continue the conversation. And the thing is, a lot of people don't look up in the sky. They don't notice these things because by the time they get up in the mornings, they've already done their business up in the sky. I've seen them do it at like 6, 7 in the morning, just after sunup. And I've also seen them do it. Sometimes they'll do it in the afternoons. I've seen them do it at like 3 or 4 in the afternoon. But you have to look up. And like Athena says, hers was in a checkerboard pattern. I've seen them do the checkerboard pattern over Sacramento. Or big giant squares, because they're always doing it in some kind of grid when they do this. So it's something to look up and see. And you'll know right away. And again, the stuff doesn't dissipate. It doesn't go away right away after the plane spews it out. It sits there. And think about that. For people that fly kites, right? Anybody that's gone kite flying, you get so far up off the ground and there's wind. That's why your kites can go up so high. Well, think of all the wind that's up there. And these chemtrail things get up there and they hang in the air like 30 minutes in all that high wind. So imagine what's keeping them up there. like chemtrail Velcro, I don't know, but whatever's keeping them up there. So it's food for thought. So if you happen to get up early enough in the morning, just look up and see if there's anything up there moving, in odd angles and stuff. And I can guarantee you're going to see something. It may not be every day. It used to be certain days that they would pick in certain areas to do it, but you will see them doing it. Anyway, I will see you guys tomorrow at 6:30. And let me in here. Push my buttons. There we go. And I'm going to show you where to get a hold of her and the books that you can pick up of hers. And I see there's an angry emoji. I hope that's because somebody didn't like the topic, or I don't know. It's the second angry emoji in a week. Maybe it's a good sign. Maybe it's a bad sign. Anyway, if you like the show, share it with 5 people. If you hated the show, share it with 5 of your enemies, because I'm equal. I like this to be equal opportunity here at California Haunts Radio. Again, if you're watching from YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. We are eclectic, like she says. We have a lot of different types of shows on. I mean, this week's a perfect example of that. We went yesterday. We were the lady that draws portraits of the dead. Now we're doing chemtrails. Tomorrow, sociopaths. We're gonna do Harold the Doll, etc., etc., etc. Down the line. I mean, that tells you how eclectic the show is. And if you're watching from Facebook, please hit the follow button. And if you're watching from Twitch, please hit the follow button. We want to get the word out there about this show. YouTube shows us no love, unfortunately. All right. And you see that thing along the bottom? That's because as a paranormal group, we do not take money for our services. We take donations. So as a retired journalist, this comes out of everything you see here. Mic, headphones, lights, cameras, action, whatever. Comes out of my pocket, just like all the paranormal equipment that we have to help people out. So I could use a little help too. And you can do that at paypal.me at California Haunts. I love this show. I love doing it. I want to keep the show on the air. I didn't even think we'd get this far. The 23rd is going to be our 200th show in this format. So I didn't even think we'd get this far with the show. But yeah, here we are, And I'd like to keep it on the air and keep the guests coming. And I think you guys enjoyed enough to do that too. So if you could help me out a little bit, paypal.me at California Haunts. Or if you're not a PayPal person, Venmo, and then just type in California Haunts. Any little bit would help. Pay for the internet, whatever. Anyway, I want to thank you all for coming, and I will see you tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. And here's our information. Websites, elanafreeland.com and Elana Freeland on Facebook. Books, Chemtrails, HAARP, and the Full Spectrum Dominance of Planet Earth. And you've got Geoengineering and Transhumanism, Under An Ionized Sky, From Chemtrails to Space Fence Lockdown. Sub Rosa America, and I've got all the versions listed of that. Those are all the different versions. She's got, I think, I think there's four books in that series. And of course, you can get that at Amazon. So again, thank you everybody for coming. I really appreciate it. And I will see you tomorrow at 6:30. Have a nice night.